Good evening, and thank you for joining us at the Cook County Bar Association Hotline 21 at CAN TV. I'm your host, Kenya Jenkins Wright, and today our guest is Angelica Lopez, an attorney with the Legal Assistance Foundation of Chicago, also known as LAF. Our topic tonight is the extremely important topic of U visas. A U visa is a non-immigrant visa available to undocumented victims of certain crimes. If you have any questions for Attorney Lopez, please feel free to call the number at the bottom of your screen, 312-738-1060. As you know, the Cook County Bar Association is the oldest African American bar association of lawyers and judges. We take this time every Thursday at 5:30 p.m. to bring you special guests to discuss legal topics and provide you with helpful legal information. Although we are both lawyers, we are not your lawyer. However, if you need an attorney or legal assistance, then please give us a call at the Cook County Bar Association. You will select one for our lawyer referral program, and someone will refer you to an attorney there. Moreover, in regards to learning more information about U visas, you may contact LAF and they will set you up with an appointment. LAF's phone number is 312-341-9617. They take intakes Tuesday 10 through 11, and they accept walk-ins on Wednesday 1 to 3. First of all, Angelica, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're really looking forward to this topic being discussed. Why don't you let us know a little bit about yourself and explain to us why you became the person known for U visas?
Thank you, Kenya. I'm so happy to be here and to share this information with all of you. First, as Kenya mentioned, I'm an attorney with LAF. LAF is a nonprofit legal aid services, and we provide legal assistance to those who are low income or meet our income requirements. And we'll talk more about that later, but I just wanted to let people know that. In terms of how I became the U visa person, well, I started working at LAF in 2009, and when I was hired there, my position was specifically to handle U visa cases.
Okay, great.
So I've been doing U visas exclusively since then and have many experiences to share.
Great, great. Well, Angelica, I gave a brief description of what a U visa is during the introduction. However, why don't you give us a more thorough definition of what a U visa is and why someone may want to apply for that?
Well, first of all, the U visa is only available to certain types of immigrants. This visa is available to those who have been victims of particular crimes. So not just anyone can apply. They have to meet those requirements. And the U visa is considered a non-immigrant visa because it is temporary. It has a time-limited validity. So it is valid for only 4 years, and after that a person can apply for permanent residency. So I'll talk more about that as well, but essentially a person is eligible for the U visa if they are a victim of crimes such as domestic violence, sexual assault, potentially homicide if you are a family member of the deceased, certain types of gunshot wounds, or other types of violent crimes.
Okay, so would being the victim of fraud or something such as that qualify you for a U visa?
Yes, it could. It depends on the context. You also can be eligible for the U visa if you have been involved in a situation of like indentured servitude or labor trafficking or fraud and obstruction of justice. Those usually apply to situations of labor-related crimes.
Okay, so it's mainly, would you say, for violent crimes and then some labor-related crimes?
I would say mainly violent crimes. We are seeing more and more folks coming forward with labor-related crimes. It's relatively new, but it is something that the U visa does provide protections for.
Okay, and tell us the background on U visas, such as when U visas were created. What's the background and the purpose of U visas?
Well, the U visas was originally created in 2000 through Congress. They passed an act called the Victims of Trafficking and Violence Protection Act. In this act, they provided provisions for the U visa, and up until 2007, all we had was the legislative law. We didn't have the actual regulations from immigration to determine exactly how we were supposed to process these applications. So in 2007 is when most people started applying for U visas.
Okay, and what are the requirements to qualify for U visas? Are there any additional requirements besides being the victim of a crime?
Yes, there are actually 4 requirements. First, as I mentioned before, you have to be a victim of a qualifying crime. There is a list of crimes that qualify for the U visa. I mentioned several of them. There are others in addition to the ones that I mentioned. When a person calls for an intake session, we will review all the different types of possibilities based on the information they give us. The other requirement is that they have to be physically or emotionally harmed in some way. So that physical or emotional harm has to be considered substantial, which means that it's not just a very minor type of harm. It has to be something that will have some sort of lasting impact on the victim. The other really important requirement is that the person has to have cooperated with law enforcement. So you may ask, well, what exactly does that mean? Generally speaking, it's anything from calling the police and filing a report all the way up through the prosecution. So a person can simply be eligible because they contacted the police and participated in the investigation by giving the police information about the crime. That would be sufficient to make that person eligible for the U visa. However, if there is a prosecution or there are further ways in which the person could cooperate, then that responsibility carries forward into the full prosecution of the case. And lastly, the crime must have violated U.S. laws.
Okay.
Generally speaking, that means that it was committed here in the U.S. However, there are certain types of laws where if they are committed outside of the U.S., they may still be eligible for the U visa.
Okay, great. And if you're just tuning in, this is a Cook County Bar Association hotline show, and we are talking about U visas with attorney Angelica Lopez. I'm your host, Kenya Jenkins Wright. Please call in and join our discussion at the number you see at the bottom of your screen, 312-738-1060, if you have any questions. Turning back, when you say cooperation with the law enforcement agency, what if I initially call the police, but then when it came time to prosecute the case, I was a no-show?
Well, that's a good question, actually. And generally speaking, that would be considered lack of cooperation because the responsibility to cooperate carries through to the prosecution. There are things that happen sometimes at that level where maybe the person wasn't needed to actually testify,
Okay.
but the case was tried and the person was convicted. That does not mean that that person did not cooperate. So the lack of cooperation has to be on the part of the victim, not because either the prosecution or the police no longer necessarily needed them for the case. As long as they provided them with the information that was requested, they've cooperated.
And will there be some verification of the cooperation with the law enforcement? Or is it just, I'll send an affidavit saying I cooperated?
No, absolutely. There is a verification of that, and that is in the form of what we call a U visa certification. The U visa certification is a 3-page form that's produced by immigration. It's part of the application process, and that form has to be completed and signed by the law enforcement to say, yes, I verify that this victim was cooperative.
And that form, as you said, is completed by the law enforcement agency or the prosecutor's office.
Correct.
And that's part of the application.
That's correct.
Well, a big point I'm sure many people are interested in is how would a U visa affect an individual's ability to work, to go and gain employment?
That's a very good question. So one of the benefits of the U visa is that you, if you're approved, you're given a work authorization form, a card, I'm sorry. It's actually a card with your picture on it. It looks like an identification card, and it shows that you have eligibility to work lawfully in the U.S. And that is good for 4 years. Generally speaking, 4 years.
Okay, so when someone applies for a job, they can use that card in order to apply for any employment in the U.S., and that lasts for 4 years.
That's correct. So with that card, you can also obtain a valid Social Security number, as well as a driver's license or a state ID, which is also very essential to the immigrant population who is trying to get back and forth to work. Driver's license are very important, and this is one of those benefits that you will get from having a U visa.
So it's my understanding that they also qualify for a driver's license or a state ID through getting the U visa.
That's correct, because now they have a lawful status.
Well, it appears that we have a caller, so I'll go ahead and accept it. Hi, thank you for calling in.
Hello. Hello, how are you?
I'm very good.
My question was, I guess, during the cooperation with law enforcement, will the subject who's helping the law enforcement, will they be provided some kind of protection during this time when they're helping out? I'm assuming they're testifying against someone who's done it wrong.
That's actually an excellent question, and the answer to that is not likely. The police officers or the courts are not necessarily going to automatically provide that person with any additional protection. However, if the type of crime and or the law enforcement agency recognizes that this particular person is eligible for any of their regular services for crime victims in terms of additional protections, certainly they will be assessed. I have had clients who were victims of murder or were somehow witness and a victim at the same time, so they had some injuries as a result of what they saw. And those people are cooperating with law enforcement to the fullest extent. So whatever the law enforcement is able to provide them because of the type of crime and the regular procedures they have, that would be available to them. It's not part of the U visa. It's not something that the immigration process would provide to them.
Okay, thank you. That was an excellent question. Good to know. What about U visas for children?
Yes. So another benefit is that the actual victim can qualify to include other family members on their application. This could be their own children, their spouse, if applicable, and potentially their parents. It depends on who the victim is. If the victim is a child, then they can include their parents as well as their siblings who are under the age of 18. If the victim is an adult, meaning over the age of 21 for immigration purposes, then they can include their children and their spouses, but not their siblings or their parents.
Okay. And is it just a case-by-case analysis, or is there a certain thing? Which one is better for the child to apply on their own or to apply with the parents if the parent also is applying?
It is a case-by-case. There are times where the child victim is older, maybe 17 or 18 years old when they come to us, and they may not have a very good relationship with their parents. So if they choose to include their parents and they fit the criteria, then we let the client decide. Often our cases are of very young children, and the parents are the ones who are providing most of the cooperation, so they're almost automatically included. Now, of course, the perpetrator, if it is a parent or a spouse, cannot be included in the application.
Okay, that's very good to know. I'm sure the next question that's on a lot of people's mind is there a cost to U visas?
That's an excellent question as well. The application itself for the U visa has no fees. However, many people will need a waiver of inadmissibility. This is something that allows for those who have some sort of immigration violation or potentially a criminal history to have those issues waived by immigration to allow them to be approved for a U visa. This does have a fee. The fee for that is approximately $600. However, if you qualify for a fee waiver, then you would not have to pay that application fee, and that is all dependent on your income, your household size, and the typical information that most places look at to determine whether or not you fit the poverty guidelines.
Okay, great. Well, what if someone has an arrest record? How would an arrest record affect an individual's ability to apply for a U visa?
Well, what's unique about the U visa, unlike other types of immigration relief, is that you can apply for this waiver to get those violations, criminal violations, pardoned for immigration purposes. This does not have anything to do with the criminal prosecution, the criminal process, or anything like that. It's not an expungement. It's just saying, look, I know that you have this particular criminal history. These types of crimes would make you inadmissible for immigration purposes, but we can waive that. So you can file the waiver, and most crimes that are not severe crimes can be waived. I have clients who had been arrested and convicted for theft, arrested and convicted for DUIs, felony identity theft. There is a whole slew of types of criminal convictions that may be waivable under the U visa.
Are there any criminal convictions that are not waivable under the U visas? That you haven't seen waived? Maybe there's no list, but you haven't seen them waived.
There isn't a particular list, but if, as you can imagine, any kind of violent crimes such as murder, very severe drug convictions, trafficking, anything that you can think of that would be in the felony class of a conviction is iffy whether or not they would waive it. And most likely any type of homicide or severe drug charge would not be waived.
Okay. Well, if you're just tuning in, once again, this is the Cook County Bar Association's Hotline Show, and we are talking about U visas with our guest, Angelica Lopez. I'm your host, Kenya Jenkins Wright. Please call in and join our discussion at the number listed at the bottom of your screen, 312-738-1060. Angelica, we've been talking about U visas, but are there any specific benefits to applying for a U visa over some of the other visas?
Yes, especially for individuals who may have certain types of violations of immigration laws that would make them inadmissible. For example, prior deportations, other types of immigration violations such as fraud. Many other applications do not allow you to waive those. So the benefit here for filing for a U visa is that you have that option. You have that ability to waive those issues. And as a result of having those issues waived, you're more likely to be eligible to apply for permanent residency. So one of the benefits overall of a U visa is that you can apply for permanent residency after 3 years with your U visa. You are also afforded the protection from deportation. So if a person has committed certain types of crimes and would be slated to be deported because of that, there is this option that might help to keep them in the country.
Excellent information. Well, one concern I'm sure is I'm sending information to the federal government and letting them know I'm here illegally. So if I apply for a U visa and I'm denied, am I at a higher risk for being deported?
The answer to that question is not an absolute yes or no. It depends. And that's pretty much the way it is with everything in immigration, right? So generally speaking, immigration, the service center that processes these applications has said we are not going to automatically put somebody into deportation proceedings. In the field we call it refer to ICE for deportation simply because their U visa was denied. Okay. However, if somebody has a very tricky history, lots of criminal arrest or several immigration violations, their risk is higher. And we try to explain that to our clients when they come in, if they have a risky past, to say it's not outside of their authority to do so. However, they have this policy. You are at a higher risk. You may want to consider if this is a good option for you.
Okay, but the policy is not to deport, but if they have a very questionable background, it may be riskier.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. So somebody who has a very clean background, meaning maybe they entered the U.S. without documentation, but they've never been arrested, they've got no other violations for immigration law, they've never left the country,
okay,
then they are very unlikely to be put into removal proceedings.
Okay.
Although I can't guarantee that. That's never a guarantee with immigration.
Well, if someone's interested in having you or another attorney at LAF review their case and see if a U visa is good for them, how would they get in touch with you? I touched a little bit on it, but why don't you go into more details about how they would get in touch to you, the intake process, and how they would qualify to have LAF take their case?
Okay, so there are two ways that people can receive an intake. One is through our info line, which is every Tuesday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. They just contact us at 312-341-9617. We will assess them for eligibility based on the type of case that they have and their income. So we can only serve those who are under 125% of the poverty line. The other option is to come to our office on Wednesdays from 1 to 3. We have walk-ins. You would have the ability to sit down face-to-face with an attorney who will assess your case and, again, assess your eligibility for our services specifically.
If someone does not qualify income-wise for your services, will you be able to refer them to another service that may be able to accept their case at still a reasonable rate?
Yes. In fact, there are several agencies here in Chicago that handle U visa cases and do so on a very low fee. And so we have a list of those agencies, and anytime we cannot take their case, we will refer them to that list.
Okay. Well, that's great to know. And once again, just so everyone can get the information down, LAF is reached at 312-341-9616. They do intakes Tuesday 10 through 11 and walk-ins Wednesday 1 through 3. We also have another question. How does LAF assist people who speak other languages?
This is also a good question. Most of the staff, in fact, all of the staff, speak Spanish for the immigration project. Our intake workers as well speak Spanish if they happen to call our general intake line.
Okay.
Otherwise, we work with interpreters to help us to complete intakes and to represent the clients. So we have worked with clients who speak Polish, French, Korean, Vietnamese. It just depends on, what's available at the time. They can bring their own interpreter if they feel more comfortable with that, but we also have services that we rely on to help us.
So people should not be dissuaded from calling merely because they speak a different language?
Absolutely not.
Okay, well, it looks like it's time for us to wrap up our show. That went very quickly. So I first want to thank you, Attorney Lopez, for coming on as a guest and letting us know information about the very important subject of U visas. And I would like to thank our audience for tuning in. And I would like to also thank our phone tech for jumping in at the last minute and helping us out. I hope everyone have a great night. And please tune in next Thursday at 5:30 for the Cook County Bar Association call-in show. Thank you so much.